Welcome to the Art of Pie. Today we're going to be learning how to make crust. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl. Oh, also just so you know, at the end of everything, we're going to raffle off 2 of our pie dishes from Row Pottery. Okay, take it away.
All right. Hi, everyone.
Cheryl.
I'm Cheryl. We are going to just go over your equipment list to make sure you have everything you need set up and ready to go. I would suggest you have a cutting board handy and a small knife, like a paring knife. A box grater, because we are going to grate some of the butter today. Also, a set of dry measuring cups and spoons. So, yeah, if you have the 4 cups, the full cup, the half cup, the third cup, the quarter cup, and then the full set of spoons. Also, you'll need a large kitchen bowl. You'll need your 2 pie plates and a rolling pin so we can roll out our dough. My preference is to always roll the dough on parchment paper. So we actually have, this is a 12 by 16 sheet. If you have it on a roll, you can just pull the pieces out now and lay them out on your board. Maybe put something heavy on top of them so they kind of flatten out. That would be great. And also, the recipe that everybody was sent calls for 12 ounces of flour. So in your equipment list, I did recommend folks to have a kitchen scale. I'm going to show you how to use the cups if you don't have a kitchen scale, but if you do have your kitchen scale, I would have that out and handy, okay? All right, so let's just start with the flour, if you will. Are you all right with that, Melissa?
I think that's
Okay,
a perfect place
great.
to start.
So Melissa and I actually have our flour already measured out, but I want to show you, does everybody have a scale, or are people using a measuring cups? Can folks say in the chat if you have scale or measuring cup, and Johnny can let me know. And I also want to talk about the flour that we're using specifically. So I also recommended that everybody buy unbleached flour. And this is King Arthur. The brand doesn't necessarily matter. The main thing with flour when you're making a pie is that you used unbleached. What bleaching actually does to flour is it lowers the gluten content. So bleached flour is great if you're making a cake where you have eggs to hold it together. But without a lot of gluten, your pie crust tends to fall apart. So I did bring this King Arthur, and what it is enriched, bleached, pre-sifted. So I think it's really important when you're going to buy flour that you really look at the bag before you buy it. You may think all-purpose flour is all-purpose flour. You want to grab that one. They both say all-purpose, but the main difference is that this one is bleached, has a lower gluten content, and this one is unbleached. So the gluten content is a little bit higher, which makes it better. Now, the other thing about pie is today we're going to be putting the pie crust in pan. But if you wanted to use the flour to make something like a hand pie, you make apple filling, you have a little bit extra, you want to put it into a hand pie. If you use bleached flour, the hand pie is going to fall apart. It's not going to hold together. So you want to use something that has a higher gluten. And what I will say that I do love about King Arthur is now they have something on the back of the bag that says, raise your flour IQ. We're not getting any endorsement from King Arthur. I just happen to really like them.
I do too. So this is no secret.
But this says 12.7%. Now this is bread flour. Obviously, if you're making bread, you want a higher gluten content because bread needs to hold together as a loaf. 12.7 and all-purpose is 11.7. And you may think that's not much, but it actually makes a huge difference. The 1% of gluten content in the flour, I would not use bread flour to make my pie because you'll get a pie crust that's tough and hard, right? Like a cracker. Bread flour is great if you want to make a cracker, not for making a pie. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is bread flour is called bread flour because higher gluten content, you would use it for making bread. Cake flour is lower gluten content. It's the lowest gluten content. And the reason is, if you try to make pie with cake flour, it's going to fall apart. For sure. Even more so than, yeah, it's going to fall apart than bleached flour. But with cakes, you have egg.
Of course.
And egg is a binder. So egg helps it hold together. So low gluten content makes your pies really, really, your cake really, really soft, but you have egg to bind it together. So all of that to say, I hope everybody bought unbleached AP, all-purpose flour, which is what we're going to use today. And if you have a scale, you're going to put your bowl on your scale, turn your scale on, right?
Yep.
So we just have that, and then we're just going to put our flour in our bowl until it says 12. So obviously it should say 0 when your bowl is on the scale.
And Karen's at home using a scale. Do you know that?
Say it again.
Karen said I'm using a scale.
Karen is
Use
using
your
a scale.
We're excited about that, Karen. So till it says 12. And the good thing about 12 is 12. Right? So you don't have to worry about you having too much or too little flour. So we're at 12 ounces on this bowl. Now, what I want to talk to you about is using a measuring cup to measure, because there's a real technique for measuring correctly with a measuring cup. I'm going to actually just put this back in my bag. What I think most people do when they measure flour is they use what I would call the technique of dip and sweep, meaning you dip the cup in the flour and then you level it off. And then, so something I know about all-purpose flour is that 1 cup should weigh 4.5 ounces. So dip and sweep yield 4.8. So it's a little bit higher. Oh, one thing I will say is that when you measure flour, something I like to do is, if your flour's been sitting in your cupboard, it's packed down in the bag, right?
Yep.
So something I like to do is I like to loosen it in the bag. I wanted to actually give you flour that was more packed down, like you would take it out of the cabinet.
Okay.
So here's flour from your cabinet. Now I'm going to put it in here. Right? And
This
I'm
is
gonna level it.
remarkably scientific, but very important information. You can't, trust me, pie crusts don't just happen willy-nilly.
Yes, and also, I feel like pie crust is hard, and a lot of times people say, oh, I'm a great baker, but I'm really terrible at making pie crust. And a lot of it is just really not knowing a couple of basic techniques. So here's my 1 cup again, packed. Oh, now, of course, it weighs a little bit less, 4.7. What technique I would like for you to use when you are measuring flour in a cup is called spoon and sweep, not dip and sweep. What you're going to do is loosen your flour in your bag and lightly spoon the flour into the cup. Not sift and sweep. Sift and sweep would actually give you 3.5 ounces rather than 4.5, so a little bit less. So when I spoon and sweep,
Oh, 4.1.
yeah, a little bit less. I would prefer to have less flour than more
Okay.
in your crust.
That makes sense.
If you end up with 14 ounces, your crust is going to be incredibly dry and crack.
It
right?
won't hold.
Yes.
Yeah.
So either you're going to use your scale or you're going to use the spoon and sweep method. Lightly spoon it in, level it off. And for that, you're going to do 2 2/3 cups. Okay? So that's our flour lesson.
I have nothing to say. She's answering all my questions as they're popping into my
If you
brain
have
pan.
questions, put them in the chat and we will do our best to answer them.
I just have a call out. Our friend is dressed in her best Prairie garb. I don't know if you guys can see, but Eliza
Is Eliza wearing her Little House Laura Ingalls Wilder costume to bake? I'm very excited about that.
Goofy sleeves and some really
Oh.
I love that kid.
All right, so we're going to start with our 12 ounces of flour. If everybody could get their flour into their bowl, that would be wonderful. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do our salt, and we're going to do 1 teaspoon each. You want to do that for us?
Sure.
So I don't like to use salted butter in my baking. I prefer to control the amount of salt I'm putting in. 1 teaspoon you need for this recipe. This is an all butter crust. It doesn't have any sugar in it. That's all we need. If you wanted to add a teaspoon or 2 of sugar, sugar actually is like a flavor enhancer, and it also will give you a little bit more color on the dough. You could go ahead and do that. What I like about this recipe is that you can use it for savory and sweet. So you could make a meat pie with it,
Oh, yeah.
or you could do your sweet pies with it.
Or a caramelized onion galette.
Exactly.
We just have a question from Karen. She wants to know if you use your scale, does it matter how you put the flour into the bowl? Sorry for the silly question.
It does not. No,
There's no silly questions.
It does not matter how you put the flour in the bowl. You don't need to loosen it because as long as when you have your bowl on the scale, it says 0. Once you have 12,
You have 12. Because
Exactly.
as we learned, 12 is 12.
Exactly. Quick learner. Okay.
That's me.
All right. So we're going to do a teaspoon now of baking powder. And we're using double acting. So for folks who don't know, when you buy your baking powder, you want the container to say double acting because double acting means that the baking powder is activated when you mix it with liquid, but it also gets activated when you mix it, when it goes into the oven. So the kind of
so it
adage,
activates twice.
Yes. So the old adage of like, if you don't get your cake in the oven quickly, it's going to fall. The double acting actually gives you a minute to mix your batter together so that when it goes into the oven, it rises a second time. Okay, so
Yay.
now you have to know that when you make pie, pie is all about getting dirty. You're going to put your hands in your bowl, and we're going to just mix our flour and salt and baking powder together. And I think I didn't say that what baking powder does in your crust is it's a leavener. We have butter. We're going to talk about butter in a minute, but baking powder also helps to give a little bit of rise to the crust. So your crust is tender, meaning soft and flaky. Okay?
Sounds good.
Does anybody have questions? Are we good?
We're good.
We're good? Okay, so I'm actually going to grab butter. So if you folks want to wipe off their hands, and we can talk a little bit about the butter. And I'm just going to go grab
If you're
that.
going
You
to
guys
wipe
can
off your
chat with
hands,
me.
you can wipe your hands off on some very cute towels that we have on the Modern Prairie website. If you haven't gotten these yet, by the way, these are the cutest little gifts, these ones, because they have berries and fruit on them. And they come in these little berry baskets that have been recycled, so they look like they're baskets of berries. I love these guys. And then we also have the chicken ones, too. I always cook with a towel on my shoulder. I'm very excited to talk about butter. I as much as I love my husband, I would like to marry butter.
I thought you did marry butter.
Well, he is kind of butterscotchy, but I just, it's one of my favorite substances in the world.
All right, so your recipe now, so we have our flour, 12 ounces, we have our salt, we have our baking powder. The next thing that the recipe says is a half a stick of butter grated on a box grater, and then we're going to dice 5 ounces of butter. And I want to explain why we grate butter for my pie crust. Most recipes that you read say cut the butter into chunks and then mix it into the flour until you get a coarse meal and pea-sized pieces.
Right.
So coarse meal basically means what they want you to do is coat the flour with the fat.
Okay.
So when flour, if this is flour and flour is coated with fat, what that does is it prevents long gluten strands from forming. Flour coated with fat keeps it from forming long gluten strands, which would make your pastry tough.
Tough. Right.
So we add the grated butter and we're going to coat the flour with the fat first. So we know that that's done perfectly. Then we're going to take our diced butter and add that to the flour and make pea-sized pieces.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That does make
So,
sense.
I feel like this recipe specifically really takes away the chance for failure. Because you're getting it...
Unless you're me.
Well, I mean, it really separates the fat so that you can get the course meal and the pea-sized pieces. I feel like people either don't go far enough and coat the flour with the fat, or they go too far, meaning they make the flour more
Mush, it's
fatty,
sticky.
more,
Yeah.
right? So I'm gonna do this. Is that okay with you?
What? You're gonna grate?
Oh, well, why don't you grate, Melissa?
You want me to grate?
Yeah, I want you to
Okay.
grate.
I love grating this butter. It's so zen.
So 2 ounces of butter is a half a stick of butter. And I have a little bit extra just in case we lose some butter on the box grater so that we're going to weigh.
There's something so satisfying about this. I can't, I don't know what it is, but there's just something, it's fun. And it's like childhood playing the way it feels in your hand. You know what I mean?
So when she's done with this, we're going to just drop it into the bowl and we're going to weigh out our 2 ounces. Now 2 ounces, the nice thing about using stick butter and not just a whole pound is that you can actually see a whole stick is 4 ounces. So for this recipe, we need a half a stick, which is 2 ounces, but I would still weigh. So here's our half. And I'm just going to put all of this right into the bowl.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we lost a little bit in the grater. We can take some of that. There's not much, but I'm going to have her finish and just use a little bit extra so that we can weigh it out to 2 ounces.
Where are we? We're at 1.7?
1.7. That'll do it.
That should do it.
Yeah.
I said very confidently.
Perfectly.
Okay.
Perfectly done.
Great.
Okay, so this is one, and then we're going to do the next. And I'm going to take my grated butter and I'm going to add it to my bowl. I'm not going to mix it in yet. I'm just going to add it to the bowl.
Try not to grate chunks of finger.
No, don't get any
We
finger
don't
in
want
there.
finger in the crust.
Extra protein.
Yeah.
Is everybody following along okay? So far, so good?
Lots of
great.
thumbs ups going on over there.
All right.
1.8.
Wait, let's see. Maybe this will do it.
1.9.
Oh, no, we're there. We
Are we
got
there?
it. Perfect. So two ounces. All right. Now, this is where things really get fun. We are going to, I'm just going to slide this over to the side. We are going to kind of pinch this butter until it completely disappears. So you should not have any pieces of butter left, meaning we totally want to coat the flour with the fat. And something you can do to check is, can you see that my hands are really floury right now? Once we have the butter completely incorporated, this grated part, the flour is not going to stick to my hands anymore. And also something you can do is you can actually pick it up and smush it in your hands. Now, sometimes a recipe will say that they want the butter to be the consistency of cornmeal or coarse sand, coarse meal.
Yeah, I've heard
right?
that.
Lots of different things.
I've read that.
So what we're looking for is for also something you can notice as you're adding your butter to your flour is that the flour, before the butter is incorporated, is pretty white. Once the butter is incorporated, it gets more yellow.
Yeah,
right?
I'm seeing that.
And that's the color of the butter. You're going faster than me.
I am?
No rush,
I'll slow
but
down.
hurry up, I always say.
I'll slow down a little.
No, you're good. So if anybody has questions, you can put them in the chat. We're happy to answer.
Johnny's watching. How's Dean doing? How you doing, Dean?
Clean hands
Clean
or dirty
hands.
He's like me. He's just waiting for samples.
I see. So there should be you should not feel any butter in your bowl whatsoever. If you can feel any little pieces in there, just keep mixing. I have a friend who makes homemade coconut milk
Oh my gosh.
from coconut, and she said that she has the softest hands in the whole world because you need the coconut and water.
Oh, yes. You get all the coconut oil.
Yes, exactly. So mine is pretty close.
This feels good, but I just want to make sure I'm not wrong.
Yeah, so you can pick it up and see. See, I see here I have some kind of larger pieces of butter. So I'm just going to keep mixing this in. And what this is, everybody, is creating the course meal. I just dropped some on the table. I'm just going to add it in. I feel like this is the place. And the other thing I would say is sometimes recipes recommend that you make your crust in the food processor. And what I would say is I wouldn't really do that until I have done it by hand a bunch of times and can really see what result I'm supposed to get.
I think this is where I went wrong when I did this by myself. I think I didn't give myself enough time to really blend
Mix
this
it
butter.
in. So mine is pretty much there. How's
This is
everybody
pretty
doing
good.
with theirs?
This is fun. It feels really good.
Yeah, it does.
I think this is the closest you get as an adult to playing with Play-Doh and stuff
Exactly.
again.
All right, so you want to feel mine and I'll check yours?
Sure.
Let's switch. Yeah.
Yours is grainier, it feels like to me.
Yeah, so I think my butter is a little bit more incorporated, right?
Yeah,
Can you
I
see
think
the
you're right.
difference?
Yeah.
I don't know if we can you show these two different bowls in a close-up so you can see? My flour is a little bit more white. Melissa's flour is a little bit more white, and you see that mine is a little bit more yellow and more heavy because she still has some pieces here.
I do, that are
See
not
that?
completely mixed in.
Yeah. You go ahead. You do it. You do it.
I'll do
yours.
it. I should correct my own mistake.
What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to grab the butter that we're going to dice to add to this, so you have a
Perfect.
second to finish. Okay.
Okay. How's everybody else doing with their flour butter mixture? Are you guys close, or am I just the only one bringing up the rear? Thumbs up. Happy? Everybody happy? Feeling good about this? This is actually feeling better now. Now it's starting to feel grainier.
Right. You feel
Yeah.
the difference. It also the flour gets very heavy.
Yep.
Right? Can everybody see this on a close-up? So this is really what you're looking for. You're looking for this to be very heavy, kind of grainy, a little bit yellow.
It's great.
And you really just don't want to have any chunks of butter left. And while Melissa's finishing, what I have here is a 2 stick and a quarter. So each one of these is going to get diced into about 1/4-inch pieces. So just small.
Here's a question for you.
Yeah. tell me.
Are each of these 2 crusts worth of?
Yes. So what you're making, what you have in the bowl with the 12 ounces of flour makes 2 bottom crusts, or it makes 1 full pie. Like it makes a
bottom and a
double
top.
crusted apple pie kind
Right.
of thing. Yes.
Great.
The other thing about this is we are actually going to use these crusts for next week's class. So when we're done making them, we're going to talk about how you wrap them and store them. And for the next class, what I want everybody to do is put the crust into their refrigerator overnight. I'll remind you again at the end of class, put your crust in the fridge overnight so that it thaws perfectly for our class the next day.
Right, because we're going to freeze them.
We're going to freeze them, exactly.
Okay, cool.
So Melissa's is ready. This is 5 ounces of diced butter, so we're just going to drop that in,
You
and I'm
see
going to
this?
cut mine.
And it's cold. You see that
Yes.
dice?
So both of these were in the refrigerator. What cold butter does is it retards gluten growth. So when you make a pie crust, it's all about gluten development, or I should say non-gluten
development.
Yeah. So I'm going to cut mine now. So this is butter from the refrigerator that I'm cutting 1 1/4 sticks or 5 ounces into small dice.
It's butter. I love
Yay.
butter.
Okay. So once everybody's ready, If everybody has their butter in their bowl.
Are we all diced and ready to go? Thumbs up? Thumbs upping. I love Dean just watching.
Okay, so what we're going to do with each of these is we're going to squeeze them. Just like that, to like a kind of an amorphous shape, and then drop it back in. And you're going to do each one individually. So I want you to flatten each piece of butter into this kind of flat amorphous shape.
An amoeba of
An
butter.
amoeba. Exactly. So squeeze them all and drop them in.
Mine are looking a little more like paramecium.
Of course,
Totally
yours are
making it.
paramecium.
Of course
I'm like,
they are.
what is a paramecium?
I don't know. Squids? No,
Yeah.
paramecium is a one-celled organism. Don't ask me how I
No.
know that. It's stored somewhere in one of the folds in my brain.
All right. So squish them all, drop them in.
Squishing and dropping.
Squishing and dropping. Make sure you get them all.
We have a question on the fly.
Yeah.
Dean wants to know why we flatten the butter.
Okay. So the reason we flatten the butter
Thanks,
is
Dean.
because we're going to incorporate the butter, and I want to handle it as little as possible. And by flattening it first, so kind of breaking it down, if you will, a little bit, what we're actually doing is lessening the amount of time that we have to press the butter to incorporate it. We want to keep the butter cold.
We want to keep it cold. Yeah.
All of that to say, we want to keep the butter cold. Okay, so I'm pretty much done.
I'm feeling done-ish.
Yeah, you look pretty good.
Yeah. Got some squishy butters in here.
Is everybody ready? We can give everybody a minute to add their...
Are we all feeling like we're ready to move on? You guys ready? Thumbs up-age? Dean Butler, you're not even doing it.
Thumbs up. We got some thumbs up. I see some dirty hands out there. That's good. Liking that.
Looks like Team Elisa's still working through it. 1 second.
Okay.
Wait, what did Dean say?
No, Team Elisa is still working. They have all hands on deck.
Yeah, but Dean Butler spoke.
Oh, you have a question?
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, of course he's ready to move on. He wants this
He wants
to go
get
as
to the
fast as
eating
possible.
part, to the eating part.
Yeah, he just wants us to send him a piece of pie. So Eliza's family's working hard over there, Team Eliza. I see her.
All right,
Okay.
if folks want to see mine, you can have a shot of my bowl here. So all I have is chunks of butter that are not incorporated,
Same.
right? Chunks of butter, flattened out, but not incorporated. And actually, can you see that the flour is really not sticking to my hands? Look at the flour now.
Yeah,
it's
pretty
so
much.
different than when not
Yeah.
at all to yours.
Yeah, really
right?
no.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to kind of squeeze our butter and our flour together and pinch it. Now, I want to really explain to folks that when you're making pie, this part feels really good. When you're
It does.
squeezing the butter into the flour, it feels incredible. And it's when you really start to feel like a baker. You're like, I am a baker. But the key to this is that bakers know when to stop squeezing. So when I say stop, or when we look at mine and see, like I think I'm almost ready. Now, what the recipe or what a recipe might say to you about this particular technique is pea-sized pieces. So in my world,
They're big peas.
This is a pea size. So what I want to do is I want to get my butter chunks to be about this size, but not too much smaller. So we're just going to kind of break it down into the flour until I start to get, yep, you're looking good. You can really give it a good pinch. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, you're pinching it through your fingers. That's great. As long as you're not making it so that the second addition of butter, the diced butter, disappears like the first, you do not want that. You want it to stay. If I kind of take away the flour, you can see that this is still fairly chunky. Can everybody see that?
Mine is pretty chunky too.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you want.
Okay.
You want it to be pretty chunky. Now, if you think about pie crust, okay, so if you're looking like our bowls, Melissa's looks perfect too, I would say stop mixing. If I was going to explain pie crust to you, what I would say is tender and flaky,
Yeah,
right?
sounds right.
So what these chunks of butter do inside the pie crust is, butter is three things. Butter is butter fat, butter is water, and butter is milk solids. So
I love butter.
when butter melts, the water in the butter is what makes air pockets. Think about like a croissant. Those layers in a croissant is from the layered butter in a croissant. That's what makes it so flaky. So you want to leave these chunks. They're going to marbleize when we roll out our crust. And they are going to make our pastry incredibly flaky. Okay? By using bleached flour or unbleached flour, that's part of what keeps the gluten strands short, tender, like a shortbread cookie.
Okay.
Okay? I'm going to go grab lemon juice and water. So if you have pre-squeezed lemon juice, you can squeeze out 1 teaspoon, and that's going to go into your bowl. If you're juicing a fresh lemon, you can take a minute now and just juice a half a lemon if it's very juicy, or a whole lemon. We're going to measure out 1 teaspoon. So I'm going to go grab our lemon juice, and everybody can get their lemon juice together.
And water, ice water.
And water. Your ice water also, exactly.
Ice water. Our water and lemon juice have been in the fridge so that they're nice and cold, because remember, we want to keep everything cold, so we keep the butter cold so that we don't get goopy.
Correct.
Goopy is a technical term that
Yes.
all Michelin star chefs use when cooking.
When making pie.
Especially when making pie.
So, anybody's grandmother, I feel like, who has a great pie recipe, put a little bit of acid. We're considering butter to be acid in this recipe. And what acid does, remember that I said pie crust is all about gluten? What acid does is it retards gluten formation.
Okay, and we don't want the glutens.
Correct. We don't want gluten.
We don't want big glutens.
No.
We just want a little.
If you wanted to put, if you didn't have lemon, you could do a little bit of apple
cider vinegar.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, what I'm going to do, and if folks want to just let us know that you're ready to move to this step, that would be great. I'm going to do a teaspoon of vinegar in lemon juice, just making sure everybody's paying attention, and a teaspoon of lemon juice in Melissa's. And what I'm going to start out with, so what your recipe says is 6 to 12 tablespoons of ice water. And I realize that that's a wide spread. But the reason we have that wide spread is because in the summer, if you are from a humid place, your flour will take less water.
Right.
So you may need closer to 6. If you're in a place that's super dry, you may need closer to 12. Also, depending on how far you added your butter, your dough will take more or less water. So I would never just put in, or I would never trust a recipe that said an exact amount of water.
Yeah,
I feel like water is really like by eye. So we're going to start with the minimum, and that's 6 tablespoons. I'm going to do 6 in mine. Try not to get any ice. You're keeping count for me?
5, 6. Because 6 is 6.
6 is 6, exactly. So Melissa's going to do 6 in hers too.
Four, 5, 6.
Okay, so now what we want to do with this is open hands this way. So we're not going to knead our dough this way. It's not bread. If I was making bread, I would do hands over. But because I'm making pastry, I like to do hands under and lift, or fluff is what I say. So we're just going to lift and gently squeeze. I'm not pinching this in my hands. I'm just trying to incorporate the 6 tablespoons that we just added.
This is already better than what I did by myself. I can feel it.
Yeah. So one important thing to note is that you're starting to get, even after 6, these kind of large pieces that have water in them, right?
Yep.
Mine is still pretty floury.
Same.
Don't knead it together. So I'm going to do 2 tablespoons in mine, and we'll do 2 in Melissa's.
Yeah, I think that seems right.
And then we're going to see where we are. Again, so that was 6. Once we're done, we'll have 8. And all we're going to do second round is fluff. No squeezing this dough at any time. I have a little ice in mine. I'm just going to take it out.
Dough fluffing.
Dough fluffing, exactly.
Oh,
All
it's
right.
getting doughier.
Yes.
It's sticking to my fingers.
Here's a very common mistake people make when they add the water. And that is that even though the dough is really not holding, doesn't seem like it's holding together well, you have these big packets. So these kind of pieces, chunks that have water in them. That water, when we chill, these pieces are going to help moisten the rest of the dough. I feel like this is a mess up moment for sure in making pie crust. And that is that people add too much water, not really accounting for the fact that there are these big chunks of water in the dough that will help to moisten the dough. So I actually think mine needs another 1, maybe 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
It's a little dry, I think.
Yeah, mine is still a little dry. But we're really watching. What I want to have, actually, look at mine, how it's starting to look, even the smallest pieces are starting to look kind of shaggy.
Yeah.
That's the way I would describe mine, is looking a little shaggy. I'm going to do 1 more. Okay, tell me.
What's the question, Johnny?
Dad wants to know what would happen if you squished it or overworked it.
So
It's tough, right?
Yes, you're going to overdevelop gluten. If you overdevelop gluten, what you're going to have is a pie crust that's kind of tough.
Like a cookie.
Like a
Cracker.
croissant or like a cracker. Mine is ready.
Yeah, this
So
feels...
I don't have any more floury pieces on the bottom of mine. I never squeezed it. Is that a word? Squeezed?
Squeezed, yes.
Squeezed.
Past first, yeah.
Yes.
Or squoze, depending.
Squoze?
I totally made that up.
Okay. All right. So can you see that this is holding together now, everyone?
Did it just instantly form that?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I just went like that and gave it a little squeeze.
Oh, you did give it a little squeeze. Oh, look at that.
Yeah. And yours is pretty shaggy. She doesn't really have, so hers feels, now,
Mine
even though
feels
we're
dry.
right next to each other, hers is a little drier than mine. And what that tells me is that maybe she didn't go as far with the butter, but that's not a problem because remember, you can go up to 12 tablespoons and you have 8.
Or
so we're
she's
going to
just
do
cursed.
1 more. No. 1 more for Melissa.
Cheryl,
Yeah.
can you take a look at everybody's dough? Because we realize they can't type right now because
Their hands are dirty.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so if folks want to hold their dough up, I'm going to come have a look at people's dough, hold it to the camera, and I'm going to come have a quick look.
And I'm going to stand here and just keep playing with my dough.
Perfect.
'cause-
Tiff, Eliza, that looks good. Let's see who else has got.
That seems better.
Perfect. Judith, is it holding together well? You can just shake if you feel like it is. Yes? Oh, yeah. That's great. Yes, Karen, that looks good.
Yep.
Can you take a little piece off, Karen, and give it a squeeze so I can see what that looks like? Yeah, that looks great. Wonderful. Yes, that looks good. Perfect. Kathy, yours looks good too. Jan, can you hold some of yours up? Is it holding together or does it seem kind of floury? It is holding together? Good.
I'm going to leave mine
Good.
alone.
Not Tu's name, but she's there.
And what about Lisa up there?
Maybe I
Oh,
could
wonderful.
dance
That looks good. Okay, everybody. So when you're ready, I'm going to go back to the front. We're going to separate them and make 2 discs, and we're going to put our discs in the fridge, okay?
Okay, I'm just keeping them visually entertained while you're screaming. I think I'm good here.
Yeah, that looks beautiful. So we can just eyeball this now, everyone. We're going to divide it into 2 pieces and just make them be as even as you possibly can. You can always fix them. And what we're going to do is pick it up. See, mine picks up as a nice ball. And what I want you to do is make a hockey puck shape, okay? So not a flying saucer, not a basketball. So don't pinch the edges, but make a disc that has a flat edge. And the reason we want to do that is, one, we want to flatten it because it's already pre-flattened for rolling out. And then the other thing is to have it be flat on the sides means that when we roll it, it's going to roll out nice and even. Exactly. You can even put it down on the surface and give it like a little pat down to make it flat. So no flying saucers, meaning thick in the middle and thin on the edges. We want it to be more like a hockey puck, flat around the outside and flat on the top and the bottom.
Get ready, Dean Butler, because these guys are going to go in the fridge and we're going to have a chat with the ladies.
All right. So I like to, once I make my 2 discs, I like to check them and see if they're the right size. Meaning if I need to take a little bit from one, which I think I do, and add it to the other. Now, also, don't worry about them being kind of a little bit cracked now. Remember that the water that we have in here is going to help moisten any parts that feel a little bit dry. And I'm going to show you a trick when we roll it out for dealing with cracks. Beautiful.
Yep.
That looks great. So you can, make them. So you don't want it to be too thin, but just so thin enough so that when you roll, they're already kind of close to the table.
Got it.
Okay?
That looks right.
So we're going to take our, I have a little trick that I'm going to tell you about now, which is that if I have room in my refrigerator, something I like to do is chill my tray so that when I put it on the tray, the dough gets cold really fast. So I actually have a tray in the fridge.
That's thinking ahead.
Yes.
Clever.
So we're just going to put our discs. Now, if I was doing this in advance, I would probably wrap these in plastic film so that they don't take up the smell of the fridge.
Yeah.
Right. But because we're just going to take them out and roll them in a few minutes, you do not have to wrap them. The other great thing is that these, at this point, if you wanted to make your dough ahead of time, but you were not ready to roll it out, you could actually make your discs and then wrap them and freeze them. And then you just put them in the refrigerator for 48 hours and they'll thaw and be ready to roll. So here are discs. I hope everybody's with us at this stage. And we're going to pop these into the refrigerator. And then I think Melissa and Dean are going to have a little
And we'll answer any
We
questions.
could see a close-up of the discs.
Oh, can you do a close-up of these?
These are mine, and these are Cheryl's. So far, so good.
They're looking good. Does everybody's disc look like this?
Yeah? Thumbs upping?
Yeah.
Dean, how are your discs?
Karen says a little kind of.
Should I come have a look? Should I come have a look? All right, these are going in the refrigerator. If you can put them on a plate or whatever you have, that would work fine. And we're going to take about 20 minutes or so. I'm going to check. Speaking of, let's everybody
We're going to check our
your dough.
discs. Check those hockey discs. See how they feel.
Yeah, I think
Hockey
we
pucks.
could probably go.
We're probably ready to start rolling.
I think so. So we're going to only take out one disc at a time
Are you hearing this, people? One disc at a time.
because we don't want the other one to warm up.
Exactly. We want to keep it cold. Please forgive me, I'm gonna sip water out of this really pretty cup. This is how we do it in the kitchen.
That's how you roll when you work in the kitchen. So we're doing quart containers, so nothing breaks. So we're gonna use 2 pieces of parchment paper per. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our disc. So my disc is pretty firm. It's not solid, like hard like a rock. The thing about, you could leave it in the refrigerator until it gets hard like a rock. The only thing is that then you really have to wait for it to warm up a little bit
because it's
to be able
hard
to
to
roll
roll.
it. Exactly. So we have 2 pieces of parchment paper, and we still are going to use a little bit of flour. So we're gonna put, what the parchment paper does is it means you don't have to add as much flour. And the whole point of measuring and doing this also precisely is not to then add tons of flour to the disc as we're rolling it out. So if you pick yours up, I have just about a teaspoon here, and I'm just gonna add that down, and I'm gonna do the same on mine. And I'm gonna put my disc on top, and I'm gonna do just about the same on top of Melissa's, and about a teaspoon on top. So people always ask me, and I'm covering it with parchment paper. People always ask me about rolling pins, and I don't really particularly like handles on rolling pins. I feel like you have much more control if you roll right from the, what is this called, dowel, rather than rolling from the handles. I feel like when you roll from the handles, you tend to wobble a little bit more, but if you roll from the dowel, you have a little bit more control. So we also have just a metal one that's only a dowel with no handles. So this is my preference. Do you want to use that one?
Sure.
Okay. Now I'm actually going to roll mine without the parchment paper so you can see what it looks like as we're rolling, because I'm experienced.
Yes.
And we're going to have Melissa roll hers with the parchment paper. And the first thing I want to say is this. We're going to start in the middle. I do not want you to press, meaning my disc is maybe 1.5 inches tall. So I'm not going to press this from 1.5 inches to 1/4 inch in the first shot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to press lightly to kind of warm up the dough as I'm rolling. And I start from the middle and I go to the edge. But when I get to the edge here, I stop. Meaning I'm not going to pinch like that off. The whole point of making this hockey puck shape is that we want to keep the edge even as we roll. So, and I'm also turning. The beauty of working on paper is that my dough is not stuck to the board. So I can roll and then turn and push. The biggest mistake I find that people make when they're rolling pie crust is they put the most pressure on the edge, and then they end up having a bulge in the middle and a very thin edge. So make sure when you're pressing, you're turning your paper, you get to the edge here, and you stop, and then turn. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And if you can see on my dough, I have these little pieces of butter. Can you see that? You can see it on yours too. And these pieces of butter, so if when you're starting you get a kind of a cavity like that, you can just push it together and give that a little bit of a pinch and keep going. Okay. So we're just rolling. And our goal with this dough is to roll it so that it is about 1.5 to 2 inches wider than the rim of your plate. So we're using these beautiful plates. Do you want to talk about these a little bit?
Yeah, these pie dishes, 2 of which we'll be raffling off the end, are they're stoneware, and they're made by Row Pottery. And this is the wildflower pattern, I believe. Correct, Nicole? Wildflower. And I actually made stuffing this morning because I couldn't wait for Thanksgiving, and I made it in the deep dish instead of in a Pyrex. It cooks much more evenly, and let me tell you, the cleanup is so easy. So we sell these, and they're just fantastic. I love the even bake that they give.
So what I like to do is I like to turn it upside down. I mean, I'm not there yet, but you'll check it against your crust as you're rolling, and you want for the dough to come about an inch, let's say between an inch and 2 wider than the rim of your pan. So we're just going to keep going. Now, if
Should I
you're,
pinch this together?
yeah,
again?
you can. Another wonderful thing about working with parchment paper is when you have 2 sheets. Yeah, and you don't have to pinch every cavity, but you can do a little. You can actually take the dough and flip it very easily, right? So once you start, and then I can lift my paper to check the base, see if I need any flour. I can flip my paper over, and then I'm just continuing to roll. Now, rolling really means that you have to press. Well, you don't want to just move the pin back and forth, because all you're doing then is warming up the dough. You really want to press. You want to see visible movement every single time you pass the pin over the dough. And mine, I can feel it's kind of sticking, the paper, so I'm going to lift my paper. Can you see the bottom of my paper here is kind of crinkled? I'm going to put my other paper back on and I'm going to flip. See how this is kind of crinkly? And then I lift.
Yeah, mine's a little crinkly
And then
too.
you can actually very easily reposition the dough right to the middle. Now these chunks of butter are what make the pastry flaky, right?
Yeah.
So when they go into the oven, those flakes, the butter makes steam, steam makes flake.
Butter good.
Butter good.
Me like butter.
So, and I'm not using my handles. I'm just using my hand directly on the dowel.
I don't even have handles.
Good.
Yeah, this is much better than when I did this by myself.
So if everybody wants to just have a look, I'm not there yet, but I'm almost at the edge of my pan.
You guys have to take a break when you get Melissa and her team. It's like all hands on deck. They're taking turns with the rolling pin, and then he's putting all.
Oh, I see, Eliza. Team Eliza, go Team Eliza.
Good. Don't worry about the cracks. I would say just keep rolling.
Okay.
And if you can see on Melissa's, she actually took what I said to heart in that she's really pressing in the middle. Oh no, that looks perfect. That looks amazing. Keep going.
I'm learning, I'm learning.
I'm sorry, what are you I have to. You have a green shirt on and you're pressing hard. What's your first name? Oh, you're Eliza's grandma.
Eliza.
You're Eliza's grandma. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful.
All right.
Oh, okay.
Oh, the other grandma.
So don't forget, everybody, if you want to flip so that your paper is not sticking to your dough. If you want to add a little bit more flour, like if you have some dough butter that's melting or warming up, you can do that. And mine is almost there.
Yes, I feel mine is too.
Okay. Yeah. Can everybody see how far mine is coming around the edge? So you need more.
Yeah.
You're thin. So what's happening here is she's a little bit thick in the middle and a little thinner on the ends. Can you see that?
Story of my life.
Exactly. So what I would say is press from here and watch how much further that goes out.
Oh, okay.
Taking the butter from the dough from the middle, and then if you really just go all the way around, she's like, let me do it, let me do it.
Okay, no. I'm watching.
Yeah. So, can you guys see mine? Have a look at my dough. Can you see here? Mine has got some openings as well. I'm going to show you guys a little trick. for handling kind of rough edges. If you want, I can have a look.
Hey Karen, can you show you? Okay, there we go.
Oh no, that looks amazing. That looks great. I'm going to show you a little trick for fixing edges, okay? So I have like a little bit of a V shape here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to even this piece out. So meaning cut a little bit off the edge here. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to fit it in to that spot.
I think I could benefit with that as well.
And just tuck it in there. You can put a tiny bit of flour on it, and you can fix it with your pen, and voila. So you see how that kind of went away, and I killed two birds with one stone in a way, in that I got rid of a rough edge here, and then I fixed. Exactly. So let's check Melissa's against the pie plate. I think a tiny bit more, and let's see. Oh, another really great thing about using paper is that when you put the parchment on the top, I like to do it without looking. You can kind of feel for the thickness,
Okay.
right? So if you have a place when you run your hand over the surface that feels thicker or thinner, you can work specifically on that area. Yes, exactly. So that means you're going to, yes, roll that out so you get a little bit more. Beautiful. I'm going to just have a look at people's crusts, okay?
Okay. I'll be here rolling. Rolling.
So, folks, if you want to
Keep
hold
those
your
doggies
crust up,
rolling.
I can have a look for you and see how you're looking. Oh, my God. Wonderful.
Head them up, roll them out.
Wow. Amazing. Fabulous. So we're going to put them in the pan now. Melissa's ready and I'm ready. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our hand under the parchment paper. We're going to put the crust pie plate here and turn. Yep. And then you can just gently lift up your paper.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. Make sure you're tucked down into the edges really well. If you have an air pocket under your crust, what happens is it kind of rolls up. Like you'll have like a pocket underneath your pie. So here's another deep crust trick, which is that if I have a lot of overhang, I like to cut it. So I have a scissor. So mine is not really bad. I have maybe a tiny bit here. I'm going to just even that out. I have a little bit here. Maybe a little bit here. And then if I have a place where I need to make up some dough, I can use some of the pieces I cut off and just kind of lightly tack that on.
Wendy has a question.
Yes.
Wendy says there's no need to grease the pan.
No, you do not want to grease the pan. There's enough fat in this dough that your pie crust will not stick to the plate. Beautiful. Okay, so now comes the fun part, crimping. What we're going to actually do for crimping, you look beautiful,
Okay, good. Thank you.
is we're going to roll this underneath. So a lot of recipes will say roll the dough over, meaning over itself this way. But what I find with that is that what the dough wants to do is unroll back out. It has a memory. So if you roll it under, it kind of sticks, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll my crust under, kind of creating like a little bit of like a cigar shape, or rolling it like a cigarette. Not that I've ever rolled a cigarette, but I guess I imagine that if that's the way, if you rolled a cigarette, that's kind of what it would be like. So I'm just rolling my crust under.
Golly.
Beautiful. You look
Oh,
amazing. Tell me.
Judith says, I think I did something wrong when I stuck to the parchment paper.
So the thing to do if you're stuck to the parchment paper is pop your crust into the refrigerator for a few minutes and then take it out again and roll it a little bit and it should come off. Okay, got it? Beautiful. Okay, so here's the technique for crimping. And it's this. 2 fingers and 1 finger. So we're going to squeeze our thumb between our pointer and our thumb. Or some people do this, but I like to use my thumb. So on my pie crust, I'm going to put my fingers about 1 inch apart. And I'm going to push into between my pointer and my thumb, and then I'm going to pull it out, and that's my first crimp. So my thumb is now going to go where my pointer was, and I'm going to push.
Oh.
Now my thumb goes where my pointer was, and I'm going to push and pinch.
Oh.
Thumb goes where my pointer was, push and pinch. Can everybody see that? Thumb where my pointer was? Yes, exactly. Push and pinch.
That's so much easier than I've made it out to be in my head.
So I'm just going to go all the way around. It's basically this, push and pinch. And wherever your thumb was on the last push and pinch, wherever your pointer was, your thumb goes next.
Everybody, we had a really great question. He said, is this pie crust making list going to be posted somewhere? Where can we find it? Simple. Did you want to address that?
Yes.
There you go. Beautiful.
Yep. I got it. I got it. Look at that. I made a crust.
All right, so we have 1 more to roll out.
Oh,
Okay.
no.
Yeah, we're going to roll the second. Is that
No,
okay?
yes, of course. I'm kidding.
And then we're going to put them in the, do we have time?
Of course we have time.
Okay, perfect.
We have 20,
Okay, wonderful.
25 minutes.
Okay, so now what I would do is we're going to save these for next week's class. These need to go into the refrigerator to chill so that they get really solid, hard as a rock this time. And then you can stack them
And put them in the
and
freezer?
put them in the freezer. Okay, so I'm going to pop these into the refrigerator.
Should they be
and-
wrapped in plastic in the freezer?
Yes, they should be wrapped in plastic because otherwise they're going to take the smell.
From the fridge. So
Correct.
But in the refrigerator too.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to grab our next dough. And if
I did use a new-
You can use. We have extra paper here.
Okay. So I feel like I want to start with new parchment so it's not wrinkled to
Yeah.
start with.
If you have extra sheets of parchment and you can use those, I would say that's great. Oh, so these bits of crust now, you can freeze them and bake them and then make them into crumb. Or if you want to, I'll show you on our next one, you can cut them out into pretty shapes like leaves or for the maple
Oh,
pecan
yeah,
pie
yeah.
and then use that as decoration. So let me just move these over. And we're just going to start with our next disc, a little flour down, same as we did before, a little flour on the top. And was it Karen whose dough stuck to the... So for you, Karen, what I would say is make sure as you're rolling that you're moving the dough, okay? So if you're finding that your dough is sticking to the parchment paper, as you're rolling, move the dough.
Karen also wants to know why do some people flour the rolling pin and some flour the dough?
Well, if you're using parchment paper, you don't need to flour the pin because the pin is only touching the parchment paper. I floured my pin because I was actually leaving mine uncovered so everybody could see what my dough actually looked like. So if you're rolling without parchment paper, you need to flour the pin so it doesn't stick to the dough. Because the butter eventually, as you're rolling, will warm up. And I'm going to wear my glasses. So same thing, we're starting in the middle, pressing to the edge but not pinching. And give your dough a nice turn. Yeah, that looks great. If you want to flip it over, make sure that it's not sticking.
You know, I feel like once you get the hang of this and you feel better about it too, I think we'll be a lot less cautious and it'll go faster.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I had a pie company for 11 years, so I have rolled a lot of dough in my day.
I have played with Play-Doh, but I don't think it's the same.
I want everybody to have a look at this dough, and can you see
Ooh,
these
the
yellow
spots.
pieces in there? That's butter. So those pieces of butter are going to make this crust super flaky and light.
You're looking good here.
Yeah, you're getting there. Okay, so my paper is crinkling up a little bit. I'm going to put my top sheet on. And then just give my dough a little bit of a flip. Nice and cold. This one is actually a little bit firmer than the other one because it was in the refrigerator a little bit longer.
How's everybody doing with their rolling?
Did everybody get their crust into the pans well?
Lots of thumbs up.
And
Lots of
crimping?
thumbs up.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Now these cracks are looking, these
So what I would
crevasses.
actually do, can everybody have a look at Melissa's? See this big one? So I would do two things. I would flip. See, she's kind of crinkled there. And then you can roll kind of, maybe this is just a pinch. Right? So if you have a big opening, and I would say now roll towards that to try to even that out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that helped.
Yeah.
It's still there. But
You can still give it, so don't forget that we cut some of that off.
right.
Okay? So use your parchment paper to flip. Makes it nice and easy. You can also, remember, just feel the top as you're rolling to see if you have a thicker side or a thinner side. And then roll towards that spot. And then once you think you're at the right size, check it against your pan. You don't want to roll it so thin that it just falls apart. And I'm pretty close.
I feel like I'm pretty close too, but let me just get one more little
Okay.
circle of rollers.
And I'm going to do one more flip. Check my parchment. You can go a little bit more, I think. Just a
Yeah, I
little
think
bit,
so
not
too.
much.
This one is a lot more cracky at the end.
A
Excuse
little
me.
drier, bless you.
It rolled out a little more unevenly, so it'll be fun to make it. You know what I mean? It'll
So
be a
maybe try to go
challenge.
a little bit bigger. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you get it so that it's hanging over the side of the pan a little bit more.
That's right.
All right, so mine is ready. And I'm just going to do the same thing we did before, which is I'm gonna lift my dough. Do you want me to wait?
No, I think we're good. It feels good. It's a little
So
thick
let's
right
see.
there.
If you feel this, I think you're a little thicker in the middle. Just, yeah, elbow grease. But lift your paper. Because if your paper is sticking to the dough, try that now and roll. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay, so we're gonna lift, put it right in the middle, and then flip. Lift your paper off, and then you can kind of even it out.
There
You
goes
can
my.
use a scissor. Beautiful, yeah. Gorgeous. Just even it out, check your edges. If mine feels really good, actually, I don't know, maybe I'm gonna cut a little bit here.
See, I got some cracks.
So the thing to do about cracks is use your extra dough and patch.
Okay.
The nice thing about doing a pie in a pie plate is that once you put your filling inside, you can't actually see if there's a little bit of a crack, and you can just patch. Patching works really easily. Here you go. Yeah. Patched. And then we're going to roll our dough under, not over, and create like a little bit of a lip. You want your lip to sit on the edge of your pie plate.
And in spots where it's really thin,
Yeah.
you just kind of
So let's see.
like that. Would we patch that?
Yeah, I mean, you may be
Or
able
just
to
spread
just
it.
push it a little bit up.
Okay.
Yeah. Or you can cut, like if you have a part that feels a little bit longer, you can cut and add
And
too.
add, yeah.
Yeah.
Great. We're in
All
good
right.
shape here.
So there's mine, making sure it's fitting down well into the pan. Beautiful, Melissa. That looks great. How's everybody doing? And now we're going to crimp. Remember, it's thumb and pointer and thumb. So we're going to push the thumb. Now the thumb goes where your pointer just was. Push. Push and pinch. I once taught a class where there was a mom in the class, and she said that she makes lots of pie, and she basically said she doesn't crimp at all. What she uses is a fork. So she makes her edge, and then she just forks it. So no crimping, just forking. So I feel like if you're somebody who says, I'm not a crimper, I can jive with that. I feel like using a fork works really, really well. I'm a crimper.
I had like 10 really inappropriate jokes go through my head just now with the fork
Save
it.
those for later. Save
Yeah.
those for later.
Just so you people are aware that I have a demented brain.
All right. So I am going to just pick this up and I'm going to crimp it.
I'm crimping.
We're crimping. And donezo.
Dunzo.
Beautiful.
Crimped.
So I want to show everybody just quickly. This is the dough that was refrigerated, so it's already pretty solid. And to wrap these, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stack them just like that. So I have two together, so you don't have to worry about them, taking too much room in your freezer. And then I'm just going to wrap them maybe in parchment and a little bit of foil, and I'm going to put them both in the freezer. For those of you who are taking our class next week, we're here on Monday, so Sunday night, you're going to take this stack and put it into your refrigerator, and it should be thawed by Monday. If you need to leave it on the counter for a little while, maybe a half an hour, that should do it. But we're basically going to just pop these in the freezer and be ready to go for next week.
All right. Well, Well, thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
guys
so great to meet
so much.
everybody.
This was great, and we'll see you next week when we fill these
We'll see you
amazing
next
pies.
Monday.